Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paranormal, the New Normal. I am your host, Jeremy, as always, trying to, make the world seem a little more normal. Never happens, but we keep that our quest just to make sure. And today we might get a little more towards normal. We'll see. Joining me today is Dr. Dion, host of Starcast's Dr. Dion Presents I Am. Welcome, sir. How you doing today?
Doing fantastic, my friend. I appreciate the invitation. I'm excited to be here and excited to have a great conversation with you.
Same. When you reached out to me, and folks, I'll be on Dr. Dion's show this coming Wednesday. But for Dr. Dion reached out to me, he said he wanted to talk about a few topics, and I was like, you know what? These sound like an interesting thing. I'm down for it. Let's talk. So I'll start us off the same way I always started off. What brought you down the road to spirituality?
Oh, well, pretty much like everybody else. I grew up in New York. We kind of talked about that briefly. I went to Catholic school. So I went to Catholic school pretty much first grade to 12th grade. So, they kind of throw you in the deep end. And I think the first book I opened in first grade was the religion book. So that kind of introduced me to really the spirituality aspect. And I always tell folks, if you go to Catholic school, you go to church every day, 5 days a week. And so I kind of really just kind of got started there. So we're talking, was that 5, 6 years old? And as I got older, I really got immersed into the Bible at the time. And so that was my introduction to spirituality. And literally, I think we read the Bible front to back in class in high school. So freshman year in high school, we read the Old Testament, and sophomore year, we read the New Testament in the class. So, pretty much read the Bible, entire Bible in high school. I reread it as a junior on my own and as a senior. So, that really was just kind of like my invitation or introduction to spirituality. And as I got older, of course, you learn more about the different religions and different concepts. So when we talk in Christ consciousness, not necessarily talking about religion, more about, a spiritual awareness or awakening and just kind of embodying what Christ stood for, which is, love for all humanity and just awareness that all things are one. So that's kind of, as I got older in my 20s and 30s, I really, really started to understand that concept.
Well, and I almost want to. Oh, I couldn't imagine going to Catholic school. My parents threatened me with it if I was being bad. Like, we're going to send you to Catholic school. We're not even Catholic. I don't care. We're sending you to Catholic school if you don't start behaving better. Okay.
Yes.
I was brought up Protestant. I went to church every Sunday. I read the whole Bible as a kid myself, like in second or third grade, just because I wanted to. Because
Nice.
I was fully immersed in the idea that my family pushed on me and that my church pushed on me that this is the truth. This is reality.
Hmm.
I fell away from it in my older teenage years. I fell away from it and became atheist, completely atheist. I hated religion. I wanted nothing to do with it, like every rebel teen feels at some point. And
Of course.
in my 20s, mid to late 20s, I started identifying more as agnostic because there's more to this world than we can see. I am not stupid enough to not believe that, and I just don't know what to call it. There might be a creator. I don't know what it is, who it is, what species it is, but there might be a creator. And since starting the show, I am 100% sure there is some kind of creation process that was done, extraterrestrial or otherwise. I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't tell you. I'm not going to lie and try to make up facts about things that I don't know. But it's it's always a good conversation to try to see what different people believe, and that's why I was 100% down for this conversation. Because I'm always down for a discussion. I'm not going to ever tell someone no, you're wrong, because I don't know if you're wrong. I don't know if you're right. It's just the way of the world. We're not supposed to know, in my opinion. So let me ask you this: did you ever have doubt in your younger years that there was a God, that religion was telling you lies? Did you ever think that in your younger years at all?
Well, I realized when I was young, I always believed in God. So I always believed there was we say back then a higher power or something, the creator would be the best way. Now, I learned kind of early now. I wasn't Catholic either, so I wasn't Catholic. So I went to Catholic school just because it was the, I grew up in Upper Manhattan, so it was just the best education. So it was really more of an educational thing than a faith thing or a religious thing. So you know, around fifth or sixth grade, it started to, kind of you get that feeling like something's a little fishy with what's going on here. And some of these messages are kind of contradictory. So I started to have, questions about religion. Now I didn't really understand it was religion that I had an issue with, not so much spirituality. And like I said, as I got older, you even start to separate spirituality from consciousness, right? So these are two totally different concepts of consciousness and spirituality. So we talk in Christ consciousness, which talks about basically a understanding that the consciousness or whatever created, like we said, reality, the simulation, or whatever we think of. Christ consciousness would be more like, okay, it's all united, it's all one, and it's all built and based in love. So, but I definitely had questions, and as I even got older in high school, like I was, I definitely wasn't Catholic, but I always kind of always believed in God. Now, I wasn't really like you said, you went to church every week. I only went to church at school. I didn't really go to church on Sunday so much until um unless I was like in the South. My family in the South, they were really when I in the summer times I would go to North Carolina and hang out with my family. And so they go to church, they do Sunday school, Bible study in the middle of the week. So they were very religious, my family, but myself, I just, religion I got 5 days a week during school.
Yeah, I mean, that was my grandfather. My grandfather was hardcore religion, hardcore Protestant. He did the Bible study. He did everything with the church. Every event he could help out with, he helped out with. That was that, and that he was the man. I loved my grandfather beyond belief, and he was a good person to look up to and a good person to want to be like because he was literally the perfect example of a perfect man. Never
Mm.
didn't get rarely got angry, and when he got angry, he never was physical with anybody. He would use logic and intelligence to tell them why they're wrong, and he would throw in a few Bible quotes if he wanted to, just because he knew the Bible backwards and forwards. And yes, we are talking about religions. It's always a good conversation, so enjoy it. But so basically, see, you got to the same point I did because eventually you have to separate out what organized religion has done to spirituality to ruin it and the truth of spirituality because organized religions I'm not gonna blame any single one. They all have their faults. But I mean the Catholics have tons and tons of problems in history, as we all know. They've done a lot of wrong things in the history of this earth. But they're not the only religion to do so, so we're not gonna single them out. But it's I'm known on the show for being adamantly against organized religion because it's that's about people wanting power and people wanting money. That's what organized religion is. There's always a few good eggs in the bunch, but mostly it's about people trying to take control of the mass people. I mean, the Pope does it. Why do we need a Pope? Why do they need a Pope? I do not understand that to this day. I mean, do you see a reason for there to be a Pope like anymore? Like it's kind of senseless nowadays.
Well, it's kind of traditional, the Catholic, the mother church. So I'm kind of like you. I always tell folks that they ask me these questions, are you religious? And just honest, I'm more a spiritual person, what religion are you? I'm more non-denominational, meaning that if you invite me to your church, Pentecostal, Methodist, Baptist, I don't have a problem coming. I don't have a problem listening to a message. But like I said, I'm more spiritual, and the difference between being spiritual and religious is that I love all religions, right? Because I love all people, right? I love all things. I don't because you believe a certain God or a certain faith, that I feel a certain kind of way about whatever you represent. Now, I do agree with you. Like, I have these conversations because, you have family members, and I say, well, are you familiar with the history of religion? And I think that's kind of where it started as well. Like, we have social studies, right? When you just study history of the world and you start to really listen to you know, um, what happened during the 1300s, the 1200s, and with the,
Hmm.
the church and the state and all these things, and the 100-Year War with the Muslims and the Christians, and the Roman Empire and all these things that went on, the Nicaea Council, Council of Nicaea. We understand that it was some stuff going on, and like you said, it was more about power and control than it was about spiritual awareness and awakening. And it's kind of still the same way if you don't really, expand your mind and kind of say, okay, what's really going on here? So I always tell folks, I love all people. If you're atheist, if you're, Christian, if you're Muslim, if you're Mormon, doesn't matter, because we're all here together. So I kind of really go on ancient principles now. So like the Hermetic principle is, all is one is all, which basically means that, like we talked about aliens, the aliens are part of consciousness or part of the creation. So we're all connected, even if we just want to do quantum physics, we're all connected from an energetic standpoint. And so that's kind of how I always view things. And when we say Christ consciousness, we just say that, I'm looking at it from a loving standpoint and not so much an antagonistic standpoint.
Exactly. I mean, as much as I almost dread bringing this up on a live podcast, I I absolutely the person who vocalized this the best, that whole theory the best, was honestly Charlie Kirk. He all he wanted was for everybody to come to Christ. He never tried to preach any certain religion. He just wanted everybody to come to Christ. And there's a great reel where a Jewish woman is yelling at him like, "You want me and my people to come to Christ?" And he's like, "Yes." Why don't you get that? Like he's like, I don't care what you call yourselves, just as long as you accept Christ into your life. Like why? And and Christ is more of a symbolic thing than you're not accepting everything that's in the Bible about Christ if you come to Christ. You're just accepting that there's the idea of Christ out there. There's the idea of forgiveness, that everybody's equal, that everybody deserves the same life. It's you're basically accepting equality if you accept Christ, which I don't know why people don't get that. Like it's got nothing to do with you don't have to go give money to a church if you accept Christ. You don't have to show up every Sunday to a building. You don't. It's you can bring Christ into your life and stay home every day of the damn week, and you can still be with him or it. I mean, I don't even want to call it him because we don't know what it is, but it's. I mean, I don't know. Were you a fan of Charlie Kirk or were you against his message like a lot of people were?
Well, actually, I'm in Singapore. I've been in Singapore for 3 years, so I don't even really know Charlie Kirk that much. So this is the beauty of being outside the country. You don't get kind of caught up in all these characters that come up and all these individuals. I was telling folks, America is if it's not one thing, it's another. I heard about the story. I send it definitely love and prayers out to his family and his loved ones. Um, but when it comes to like when you're saying come to Christ, it becomes very hard lines, right? Because you have people who. So I always tell folks, I grew up in New York, so just in my building, we have friends that were Jehovah Witness, Mormon, Muslim,
Yep.
Baptist, Catholic. So we all still played in the same playground. So it was never like, oh, well, you believe that, so you can't play with us. And, so I kind of feel like when people say come to Christ, it becomes like, oh, whatever you believe in is wrong and I'm right. And this is kind of where religion kind of, I tell folks, this is kind of where religion kind of comes because religion is a I'm better than you or you're right, I'm wrong, I'm right, you're wrong type of thing, where spirituality is more of a we're all in it together. So when people say come to Christ, some take that as a slap in the face, saying, "Well, what I believe in Abraham, the Old Testament. I believe in Muhammad, or I believe in Hinduism." And so when you're telling folks, "Oh, whatever you believe," because I went to Catholic school, of course, we were taught that if you don't do whatever we say, you don't confess your sins, you're going to hell, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't believe in Christianity, all people who are not Christians are going to hell, right? So this is kind of what kind of that hard line that the Catholics teach. And I think that some folks take that, as disrespect when you're saying, come to Christ. And they're like, well, whatever I'm doing has worked for me. I don't want to. It's kind of like when folks come to America and we like, speak English, right? I always tell folks it's kind of like saying it's kind of the same thing. And folks say, well, I speak French, I speak Spanish. Well, speak English now because you're here. And so some folks may take that as offense, but as long as he was, like I said, I really don't know his story so much, but hopefully, he was talking about unity and just kind of bringing all folks together. And when you just talk about that and not necessarily put like, you have to come to this individual or come to this or come to Muhammad. Like if somebody was over there saying, come to Muhammad, then that would have been taken a certain kind of way as well. So I kind of,
He,
you know,
yeah, I mean, he wasn't. Oh, he never met Christ as like a actual person. He meant like the idea of unity. Like that's what he was
mm,
coming to. It was like come to the idea of forgiveness, come to the idea of unity, come to the idea that we are all one people and we need to work together in order to make this world survive. And I
mm,
mean that's he. I mean I'm honestly surprised you haven't heard more about him because I mean he was worldwide before he was shot down, unfortunately. But I I mean, no man deserves to die for freedom of speech. I will say that much because no man deserves to die for that, and it's I don't care who you are. You can say whatever you want to say on grand stage. You don't deserve to get taken down for it. You may even if you're the wrong, even if you're in the most wrong you could be, you don't deserve to be have your life taken. There's better ways to deal with stuff like that, in my opinion. But
oh,
look,
definitely.
if you look through history, freedom of speech, people who use their freedom of speech have been persecuted a lot in history, especially when it comes to religion. I mean, look at Martin Luther. Look at Martin Luther back in the 1300s. You brought up the 1300s. Look at Martin Luther, who was trying to basically point out some of religion's flaws that the government was trying to utilize, and he was burned at stake for it. Like it's, I mean, the Crusades, the Templars, that era of history is very dark for religion, and all. Like
Definitely.
I mean, it doesn't get much better till modern day, even. I mean, but but you mentioned earlier aliens, so I'll let you know what. Let's go down that road because I was going to go down that road. I was going to go down that wormhole eventually, but since you brought it up, I mean, I think you kind of said it, but so I'm assuming you believe in extraterrestrials to some degree.
Of course. I mean, it's just I had this conversation with a buddy of mine's a couple of years ago, and I was just telling him it's just a mathematical thing. Like just mathematics says that there has to be other life forms, not just in the universe, but in the solar system, like in the galaxy, like within the 9 planets, there has to be other life. This is just my opinion, right? There has to be other life forms, right? And when you understand quantum physics or metaphysics as well, if someone believes that aliens exist, guess what? They exist, right? That's just the power of the mind. If someone believes, one person believes that aliens exist, believes in an orange 18-foot alien, guess what? It exists somewhere. This is just my theory on it. All right. So, and just the history of the world tells you that something, pretty much all the ancient cultures has a story about visitors, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Earliest the Sumerians, the Asians, China, India, they all have stories. I mean, Aborigines, Africa. So in this proof that's been left in cave walls and so many artifacts that it's just kind of hard, not even talking about all the people who said they've been abducted, they've seen, I've actually had a situation where I saw something in New York in the early 90s that was kind of, unexplainable at the time. And I kind of, this was when we were young and we partied a little bit. So I kind of took it like I might have been drinking a little bit too much today. But the next day, there were reports on TV and in the
Yep.
newspaper about something in the sky. So that's modern times. That's with my own eyes. But like I tell folks, if anybody believes in aliens, and just from a mathematical standpoint, where we can only see less than 1% of the universe, how would we know? Well, how would we know? So just going to the facts that this stuff is, the oldest civilization, the Sumerians said that they were basically, created by things that came out of the sky or guys that came out of the sky, kind of sets, okay, well, this has been going on for many, many years. And I don't see. And now they came out. So I actually had this conversation before. They said, "Oh, UFOs are real," when they had all this stuff in Washington. And I had told my friend this. We had this conversation, I believe, in 2022, and he was looking at me like, "You really believe in aliens?" I'm like, "Well, just for mathematics, it has to be. something other than humans in
Uh,
the universe
Yeah,
or galaxy, you
and,
know. And so,
like you said, the mass amount of sightings of, I mean, the U.S. government even admitted in 2020 that there are UAPs out there, UFOs that they can't explain, and they finally admitted and said we don't know what these are. We've been lying to you for 60 plus years. We have no idea what these are, and it's. I mean, I literally was walking my dog in my yard 2 nights ago because I live in a very high UFO area. Like, for some reason, people people hypothesize it's the minerals that are in the mountains up here that they use it for fuel.
okay,
But I literally was taking my dog out a couple nights ago, and I look up and I see three, four moving things in the sky like in a straight line, and I'm like, and I've seen this type of thing before. And I'm like, once again, that can't be stars moving like that, and that's not a plane. I see enough planes go over my house to know what they look like from this
ye-
distance. Like it's, I'm like, that is something unexplainable. That is in my definition, a UFO, and I, I mean, I've talked to my people on the show who have been abducted, who have had experiences in communication with extraterrestrials that I 100%, 150% believe they're out there. They have to be. Like you said, it's mathematically and scientifically improbable to think that they don't exist. Because I mean, you mentioned the Sumerians. I mean, every ancient religion had gods that came out of the sky. The Norse, the Japanese, every ancient civilization had some kind of belief of gods coming down from the skies to help them if you pray to them. Which even the Egyptians, whose gods look very similarly to different extraterrestrial species people identify today. So, I mean, it kind of only makes sense. And I've heard enough creation stories of us being created by extraterrestrials, of three or four different races creating humans. What they create us for is up for debate. Slave race is the most common theory I've heard, but there's also the idea that we were created as a experiment of types. But I mean, it plays into a lot of history, a lot of biblical history as well. I mean, the Great Flood. There are extraterrestrial versions of that story where extraterrestrials saved half of humanity and took us underground, and that's a society that still is that we can't say what happened to it. Maybe we did come back up, and maybe that's star seeds today, or maybe it's a society that's hidden away somewhere, like in a hollow Earth or in Antarctica where nobody goes. Maybe that's why Antarctica is protected by every government in the world. Who knows? But I mean, you're right. People really have to be naive nowadays to not realize extraterrestrials are existing, are around our planet, and are possibly, most likely, on our planet already, hidden in disguise of some kind. I honestly think things like Men in Black were written as comics to make people become less crazy about the idea, and eventually, when they want to reveal it, they'll reveal it. That I think the governments know. I think they're right. I think they're just waiting for the right time to reveal it to people.
well, like you're saying, I mean, like I'm like you. I'm very well read upon all these theories. My grandfather actually told me about the several incidents in the Bible. He said, well, Ezekiel saw a will within a will, right? He
Mm-hmm.
said the Pharaoh saw chariots, of chariots of fire in the sky,
Yep.
right? Moses did, was Moses talking to an extraterrestrial? You had Jacob's ladder. You have all, Jesus ascended. So you have so many different stories that can be interpreted as, extraterrestrial interventions or you know, um, situations or incidents that this kind of skewered. And even when you listen, they said the gods created, right? The gods created. So, the Anunnaki
Mm-hmm.
was created, and let us see us in our image, right? So it's not one God, but the gods, right? And some say, oh, it's a lowercase g. They created, like we said, they have theories that we were created in labs, and this is this, like if you watch the Matrix, this is the sixth iteration of humans. I've heard that theory before, and like you said, you have uh what's the ninth planet again?
Oh, God, it's
Vera,
truly,
Nibiru,
yeah, yeah, it's truly.
Nibiru. yeah, all these things and Anunnaki and so yeah, I mean it's just so many stories and we're not even talking about the ones we talk about the underground, right? The underground realms of extraterrestrials, right? When we
Yep,
talked about Hopi Indians and so many stories, so many different entities and if you really just know history. So I'm like I like to call myself an unofficial historian. So I've studied so many books just on history because I always tell folks when you understand history, you understand the spirit of man. So just like you were talking about when we go through you know, the Dark Ages, which is pretty much 800 to 1200 or so until we get to the Renaissance, a lot of things going on, a lot of wars, a lot of just conflict over religion, right? So we're killing in the name of God, so doesn't really make sense. It really shows that mankind's spiritual nature was not as high as it used to be back in the days. And I think that's why a lot of the stuff that so I'm in Asia now, but you know, a lot of these things are these old monuments are hundreds, thousands of years old. So how intelligent did these people have to be to understand, okay, let's create things in stone because if we create things in stone, guess what? They'll be here for thousands and thousands of years. And how they do it, we don't know, right? So now we're talking about technology that we can't even explain either. So we haven't even talked about all these artifacts and all these great monuments that are hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of years old, that we have no idea how they built. Like the
yep.
pyramids is just the one that we would just say, but it's hundreds of pyramids in the planet. So, you know, how
There
did they
is.
get built?
There's pyramids. I mean, everybody knows about the Egyptian ones, but there's ones all over South America. There's ones all over different parts of Africa as well. There's ones underwater in the oceans, which don't even get me started on why they're there, because that's a whole nother theory. But I mean, they just recently found that there are huge rods connecting the pyramids in Egypt. Like they're underground. There are metal rods that basically are almost like power nodes underneath the, which, why are they there unless they were built by some advanced civilization to, for some kind of device? I don't know what they would even use it for. I mean, for their ships, to charge their ships. I don't know. Like, it's beyond my grasp of science because it's beyond Earth science. It's outer space science basically. It's advanced alien science, which, who knows what they use it for? I mean, maybe they used it to control the Earth. Who the hell knows? I mean,
We never know. They could have been doing like Tesla, you know, it could have just been a worldwide energy source. Who's to
yep,
say? Like, you know, from what I've heard, they were just, you know, the pyramids aren't tombs. They're just, you know, giant power rods or what is I just saw something recently. They were saying that they're circuit boards, right?
yeah,
They're just giant circuit boards. So if you look at a microchip now, and if you go, you know, 10,000, 20,000 feet and look down at these locations, they look like circuit boards, right? But we're doing small, but this is on a grander scale, right? So who created that? Who could see it? We talk about the Nazca lines in South America. Like, who created this? Right? You know, you got all these ancient, because you know it's always one of my bucket lists to really go to a lot of these ancient sites.
yeah.
You know that
Same.
it just can't be explained, and so it's just so many of them that you know when I have time that I'm definitely going to visit as many as possible. And so yeah, like we said, just the mathematics alone, I tell folks, just mathematics, like it's things on planet Earth that we don't even know about, right? You know,
Oh
so I
God,
tell folks, we can go to the moon, but we can't go to the bottom of the ocean.
did we? Well, did we go to the moon? That's a whole nother discussion. But I mean, it's oh, I'm actually
Exactly.
I'm very split in that. Well, I have theories
I
about if
agree.
we did, and I have theories if we did, and I have theories why we haven't been back since the first time. But I mean, and I have theories about if it's a hollow moon or not, but that's a whole other thing as well. Um, but basically, I mean, you're correct. We don't. There are things on Earth we don't know. I mean, we mentioned Hollow Earth briefly, underground civilizations. Like, there are so many. Every ancient civilization had stories of underground societies. These mole men, these pure white human, pure white humanoid figures who couldn't stand the sun. Like, every society had at least one story about these. And the Native Americans used to travel through the earth on a spirit quest from the East Coast to like somewhere in the Midwest. I forget the exact locations, but which how could they do that if there was not some kind of hollow earth for them to travel through that far? Because the cave systems are huge, but they're not. I wouldn't think they're big enough all the way through for a human to walk through. So there's got to be some kind of society and how they survive. There's got to be some kind of society down there, and there's got to be some kind of nourishment down there. There's got to be some kind of source of food, source of water. There's got to be something. So, and whether that's extraterrestrial related or just the way Earth is since the beginning of time, who the hell knows? I mean, I can't tell you, but I have theories for both as well, of course. I mean, there's always multiple theories for everything on this freaking planet, but Hollow Earth exists, in my opinion. I mean, it has to, and that could be where a lot of the cryptids, a lot of the ancient megafauna that we sometimes see nowadays, but not often, and maybe living dinosaurs as well. Maybe that's where they all can exist still, is because there are hollow Earth portions of Earth at least that are hollow and create like little mini. What's the word I'm looking for?
I mean, of course, I definitely believe. I mean, you have Colonel Byrd back in what was that, the 40s and the 50s, right? Was it what, late 40s when he did the North Pole? Was it North Pole, I
Yeah,
believe?
yeah,
And he all the fleet out there, and then he met the masters and all. I mean, so it's just too many. You can't have all these stories and then not be based in some type of truth, right? Like we just can't have thousands of stories and like they're all wrong, right? So inner Earth, flat Earth, like you said, the moon issues. I always tell folks, when we had all these movies, we had Star Trek in the 60s, Star Wars in the 70s. And I tell folks, well, these things are based on real things that already happened. Like I just this is my theory on it, right? These things already happened and they're just based on stories that we know of. Somebody knows of these
yep,
stories, right? Of these galaxies far, far away, and these galactic federations, and all these things that we kind of hear about the galactic federations. But these things came out in the '60s, so they knew about these things before then, right? So they know about these things way before then. There are paintings that are very popular paintings, of things in the sky, and there, reports in newspapers from the early 1500s of battles in the sky, a bunch of fleets. I mean, this is the 14. There's no airplanes in the 14, 1500s. So what's in
no,
the sky having a battle, right? We're not even talk about the Margarita, the wars in the historical texts of India, which kind of talks about these battles in the sky and Brahmanas and all these things. So it's just too much evidence to say that, to kind of just brush it under the rug, like, well, I mean, no, that just, and I feel like it kind of goes toward, when we talked about religion, this is kind of what my grandfather kind of insinuated, is that, well, you can't tell people that there are things that's out there, because then no one believes in the military. Like, what do we have military for when there are things that could just do this to the military? So now you lose control. So, and then religion also becomes affected by that. So, military and religion institutions are affected if we do know these things, and now we can't control because we can't separate, right? Because
yep,
now it's about the planet Earth and not so much about your religion, your faith, your nation, your country. So, all of these things kind of are impacted when you say, okay, aliens exist and it's something we need to do about them.
exactly. I mean, that's exactly why the governments. That's why the governments haven't told the people yet, because and that's why there has been a mass announcement of it, because or a mass revealing of it, because it's simply the fact that Earth is not ready. We are too busy fighting each other to ever stand united globally. We are too busy. We haven't hit that nirvana point yet where we're one united planet and we don't fight with each other. We don't argue with each other. We just have one mass world government that runs everything. We're not near that point yet. We probably won't be for a long time because, God, we fight among each other in our own countries, let alone other country versus country. Like it's just horrible. Like every country has its issues. It's not just one. It's every country has issues in this planet. So it their spiritual awakenings are happening. 2027, I keep getting told is going to be a big year for some reveals and for a mass spiritual awakening to begin, where maybe we will start heading towards that. But and I think something like that would make us start thinking more globally than locally, if that's what it would take, something outside of our realm of normality, such as aliens existing. That everybody has to finally admit it, and there can't be deniers anymore saying, "Oh no, they don't. There's no such thing as aliens," which how can anybody say there's not? I mean, like we said earlier, how can anybody really even think that to this day is beyond me? But people are stuck in their ways. The religion has blinded people for generations, and the government has too. They make everything into a fantasy movie, into a farce of what is really out there. You said it. Star Wars is actually based on from what I've been told, on a Palladian Arcturian war that they were in with other species. So it's based on that loosely. But Predator, I knew someone who I met. I didn't know. I didn't meet this man, but I heard on another podcast a man was talking, and his father was the writer for the Predator movies, which he wrote based on things he heard about in the military and that he saw in the military. So, gee, aliens that can make themselves invisible. There's a lot. I've heard a lot of stories about that. So, I mean, why wouldn't it be real? Why wouldn't all this science fiction, all this pop culture be based on real things to try to make it a little less scary when it happens, actually, because it will be used to the idea. Because we all love Men in Black movies. We all love Star Wars. Star Wars and Star Trek are two of the most biggest brands in the freaking world for decades now. So we all have been adjusted to the idea that this is awesome. This is a cool thing. We should be happy if this happens. And guess what? They're just softening the blow. That's all they're doing. I mean,
Well, like I said, I'm kind of like you. I'm well versed on these things. So, you got Project Bluebeam and all these things of the fake, invasions and all these things. But I personally believe that, we talk about how far we are from unity. But what's going on to me is like I talk Christ consciousness. We have multiple dimensions, right? So, I talk to folks about words, how words can encapsulate and imprison your mind, right? Like we talked about these programs about folks who kind of deny that aliens could be real because they've been taught that aliens and ghosts and all these things that's make believe. And well, we say the universe, and then now we got Marvel that talks about the multiverse.
yep,
So like a lot of the things that that I'll be talking about are the different levels, because there's levels to, like I said, there's levels to this thing, right? And the levels is that, okay, you have the universe, which means one verse, then you have the multiverse, which means a couple or a handful, but then you have the omniverse, right? And the omniverse is all of the universes, however many there are, right? So they say how many stars. I think in the known universe, I think they said it's 200 billion trillion stars or something like that. So I tell folks, well, if it's 200 trillion billion stars, it's 200 trillion, it's 200 billion trillion universes.
I mean,
Minimum.
it makes sense if there
It's
is.
a theory.
It makes
We don't
sense.
know.
Yeah, not every star is a sun and can provide life. I mean that's based on science. Not every star out there can be a sun and provide life enough for a whole universe or even one planet. But there are definitely countless other universes out there. We don't have the technology to see them or to visit them. And
Well, we can only see what less than 1% of space anyway. So imagine
yeah,
if you could only, I'll tell you, imagine if you can only use 1% of your heart. Imagine if you could
you
only see 1% of your vision. Like, how much can you see if you have 1% vision, right? So this is what we actually see. And we're just talking about physical reality. We're not talking about the frequencies, right? We're not talking about the dimensions. We're not talking about the different concepts of these type of realities. So I always said that, like, they talk about space travel.
yep,
So I always told folks that, my theory on space travel is not that like the Arcturians or the Palladians go from one place in space and we travel through space to another, I say it's a frequency, right? They have the ability to say, okay, Earth is vibrating on what is 2025 on the 2025 frequency. And they have the ability to say, okay, let's go to 2025. And they just hit a switch, just like turning it down on your radio, and then they pop up, and then they can say, okay, well, let's go back to 2030. So a lot of times folks say, well, we saw this ship. I think it's like it was in Pennsylvania where they talked about the bell, that somebody saw the bell in the 40s, and the next thing it crashed in the 70s or something like that in the hill in Pennsylvania. I think I forgot what exactly the location. So, it's more time travel machines than it is space travel almost in some ways, right? So this is
Yeah,
why.
I mean it's kind of like, I mean, and this brings back again to pop culture because they did a good job using this to explain it. I mean, hyperdrive in Star Wars, I forget what they call it in Star Trek, but I mean, it's literally putting in coordinates of some kind of measurement. We don't know what, like parsecs, what have you, and you jump through space and you basically go through a wormhole part of to a different part of the universe. And who knows what you're jumping to? I mean, Doctor Who did it too. Like he could put in a date and a time in the TARDIS and go to a certain date and time at a certain location, which is exactly the idea that what ultra terrestrials can do. I mean, we don't even call them extraterrestrials at that point. They're ultra terrestrials because they're jumping through dimensions. They're just hopping through the different levels of the multiverse to get to the right part, which is also why we can't see them all. All these creatures out there that people are now hypothesizing are ultra terrestrials because they just disappear when they're seen, or we can't find bodies of them when they die or get shot by hunters and whatnot because they just disappear. The bodies aren't there anymore, and it's a multiverse idea makes sense. The whole theory of a multiverse, makes perfect sense because why would there be only one dimension? That doesn't make sense. There's not one of anything in this world. So, I mean, to me, it's just I don't know why people don't understand this. I really don't. But
Yeah,
I
well,
don't.
I tell folks, the education level around the world is not the best anymore. I'm not sure what year you were born. I was born in the 70s, the early 70s. So, I tell folks if we just look at YouTube. I saw it, and it's sad. I work with children for over 20 years. So, I've kind of seen that evolution of the child's mind and the educational and just basic, what we would call basic knowledge. And, because of, social media and technology and you just don't have that level of understanding anymore. And because
Yeah,
you're over bombarded with just life, right? You got to go to work, you got to pay the bills, you got to make sure your kids are safe, you got to do all these things. All these other things become arbitrary, right? They just are not important, and they become more like entertainment. But like we said, these stories have been around for thousands of years, like thousands and hundreds of thousands of years. If you're familiar with the Emerald tablets and what's the list of the kings. And so these are stories they don't talk about, because if you go to the Bible, I was just talking about this earlier today with a friend. Like, if you go to the Bible basically says that humanity is 5,000 years old or something like that. Well, if you look at the book of the Kings and Sumerian legends, then it's 200 and plus thousand years old. And
yep.
so what happened to these 195,000 years that you understand? So
Oh
so
yeah,
it's
it's
we can see
ridiculous.
that there's always some I tell folks we can always there's a lot of manipulation going on with history and the facts and things that happen, and we definitely know, you're in America now. I grew up in America, lived in America for 50 years, that whatever they tell you on the outside or on the surface is always layers that go much deeper than that. Because I read, I had a friend introduced me to a book in the early 90s called Behold the Pale Horse by William Cooper, which
Yep,
I'm sure you're familiar.
I've heard of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
haven't had
yeah.
a chance
And
to
so
actually read it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah. So this is one of the first books. So like I said, I'm very well read up on a lot of the things, and he talked about a lot of concepts in that book that have actually come to pass. So he kind of dealt with the Men in Black, and he didn't live much past. I don't know if he made it to the 2000s. So you know, but some interesting theories and his experiences, and kind of like you talking about, of course, during all the wars, there were always reports of interesting, beings and interesting interactions in the air and on the ground. So yeah, it's just a part of reality right now. So those who don't believe, I just think sometimes we're just not exposed. It's kind of like we grew up in New York, and I talk to folks out here about things that go on in New York, and it's just unimaginable, right? It's just
Hmm.
unimaginable, but these things could happen, and these events could be. I'm like, well, New York, and New York is a little bit different than LA. In LA, I went to college in Los Angeles, and so you have the gang. I went to college in the '90s, so this is when the gang thing was
Yeah.
really big, and you would have those conversations, and people in New York would be like, well, "Huh? I can't believe what they do this because of." And so it's a lot of that, I believe, as well. If you're not exposed to it, it's just very difficult to believe. Like they said, seeing is believing. But as I get into a lot of the stuff that I talk about in my coaching program, is it's actually believing is seeing. So what you see is just a result. What you create is an inner thing. The physical reality is more of the result of what your inner reality. So I actually believe, this is just a theory of mine, is that you're going to have a split of dimensions. So you're going to have some people who live in Christ consciousness on planet Earth, and then you're going to have some that live, and we'll just say non-Christ consciousness, right? Some that's going to live in the
Yeah.
love frequency, some that are going to live in the fear frequency. And you're going to decide what you vibrate at. And as you vibrate in a certain frequency, like we talked about, the religions, and if you're in a fear frequency that you're going to hell, and some other, nation or whatever is coming to get you, then guess what? They may come to get you. And then if you have a vibration or a belief system that we're all getting better, we're all gonna come together. We understand that we have control of our minds and our spirits, and we don't let the programs or the paradigms or the pendulums kind of pull us one way or another, and we can kind of be an independent thinker. Then we may shift into Christ consciousness, right? Which is the split over here where the world says, okay, we want to live in peace and harmony and unity, and we don't want to be fragmented and separated and living in fear and scarcity and lack. So, that's kind of a lot of the things that I talk to when I talk to a lot of my clients. We try to find these blind spots and try to, help them to kind of recalibrate and get rid of a lot of this programming. Now, we grew up in America, so we know it's a lot of programming, just your family, your friends, your neighborhood. Like I said, we grew up in New York, so we have a certain programming. I had a lot of family in the South. They have a certain programming, the West
Oh yeah.
Coast. I lived in the Midwest, I lived in the Deep South. So everybody has a different program that they kind of tap into. And once you realize that, it's all a part of this, it's just all a part of the same, it's just that you got heart cells, and then you have stomach cells, and you have brain cells, and you have, liver cells. But guess what? They all create the body, right? They all work in unison, right? You have red blood cells. And so once we understand that all these components create the reality that we live in, and that, by coming, like, like you said, was it Charlie Kirk? You said, right? We're all
Yeah.
coming together. Yeah. We're all coming together to make the world a better place. And so I don't know the conspiracy theories behind him. I'm sure there's some theories going on, but as a nation, I feel like, I always feel like it's going to get better. So I'm glad that we had this conversation, and we're going to continue to move forward with these conversations. This helps send a vibration. I always tell folks, send a frequency, send a ripple through time and space, in order to open up these discussions and also make the world better than how we found it.
Exactly. And I basically agree with everything he just said. So I mean, it's not. I honestly don't have anything much to say back to him because it's all true. Like it's we and distractions in today's youth are 100% accurate. It's horrible. I have kids. YouTube is, I hate YouTube. I hate Roblox. I hate all these distractions that kids have nowadays that suck them in like zombies. It's horrible, just plain horrible. But I want to thank Dr. Dion for coming on because it's been a freaking amazing conversation. I would have kept this going longer even, but I do have another interview in a few minutes, so gotta hop over to that one. But um, tell them where they can find you, where they can find your show.
Well, my show is gonna be on Gnostic, my website. It'll be launching in the next couple of weeks, next 2 to 4 weeks. Dr. Dion presents.com. Whole bunch of great things on there, courses, memberships, course of videos. I'm going to be creating a YouTube channel which we're really going to dive deep on just the laws of self-mastery and personal empowerment, spiritual enlightenment, and also how to really create and master your reality consciously. So that's kind of what we're moving into in that direction. You can always reach me right now if you just want to, because I'm actually a doctor of chiropractic as well. So, and I specialize in weight loss and transformation and nutrition. So I always tell folks, wherever you are, right, you want to get some help and some information on being well physically, we can help you with that. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, we can help you with that. Wherever you need, you feel like you have blind spots, you want to get some help, you can reach me on my email, which is Project Lightbody 1111. So that's at Gmail. So PROJECT Light LIT Body BODY 1111 at Gmail. Just reach out to me and just and then we'll get in contact and giving out free consultations now in the beta stage. So love to hear from you guys. I appreciate you for having me on, Jeremy. I look forward to having you on the show next week, and that's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, it's going to be a great conversation. I can already tell. Well, folks, I want to thank him, Dr. Dion, for coming on once again. And you all know where you can find me. If you don't by now, shame, but it's all in the outro. Check it there, folks. And I will see all you watchers in about 5-10 minutes. So thank you all for coming out. Check out this one and hope you check out the next one. Going to be another fun episode. So I'll be talking to you soon, sir. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you, my friend. Be blessed.